Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Janeane Bernstein, and she's here to share with us her new book, Get the Funk Out. Now, Janeane is a writer, on-air personality, voice actress, and researcher. She earned her doctorate from Boston University and received degrees from Syracuse University. In 2011, she started her own show, Get the Funk Out, at UC Irvine after losing her childhood friend. She's always loved writing, learning electric guitar, and other creative pursuits that feed her soul. So let's welcome to the show, Janeane Bernstein.
Thanks for having me.
What an honor it is to have you here. My goodness, we've been connected for such a long time. You're just a fabulous radio host. And I was so delighted when I heard that you had this new book.
Yeah, it's funny because the first thing that happened was I started the radio show, and then over time it just made sense that this had to be a book.
Well, and for our listeners that are new to your story, why don't you share with us what started on, you really kind of started you on this path for writing this book?
Well, I've always loved to write, and I also turn to writing when I'm going through a challenging time in my life where I'm trying to process something. And December 29th, 2010, I lost a friend of mine suddenly, and I was in such a state of shock and depression and my own funk. And I didn't know really how to handle it. I was such a state of disbelief. I don't know if any of your listeners have gone through this, but it's kind of inevitable. Things happen. So long story short, I took a year off from hosting a music show. And over that time, I thought, wow, am I in a funk? Other people go through funks, and why not call a show, Get the Funk Out, and learn from it and process what I'm going through? And what a gift this has been.
That's just so amazing to share that, because a lot of people get into funks and then they're like, what is a funk? How come I'm here? How do I get out? And I think these are all like common questions.
Oh, it definitely is, because, first of all, there's no time frame. Like, oh, a week's gone by. Okay, you're done. I mean, it's very personal, and also depending on the magnitude. I mean, I lost my dad to stage 4 colon cancer, and I actually was taking care of myself during the time he was very sick, because I knew I had to stay mentally and physically strong, because that's how I function. I mean, and personally, I would recommend that to anybody. You're going through anything with anybody in your life, or a professional issue, you got to take care of your mental, physical, and emotional health, because it really impacts you and makes you more resilient. You have these tools for survival, and you're able to handle more of life's curveballs, as I call them.
So what if somebody has funkiness that developed as a child?
Which is so common, because, I went through my own stuff, and we all do, where we suppress things. Well, first of all, I really recommend therapy, because you need somebody that is not part of your situation, not part of your backstory, can give you, objective feedback, and just someone you feel you can connect with. And, sometimes you might meet with a therapist and you think, I don't feel any love connection there,
Mm-hmm.
So you find somebody else. You find somebody that you feel comfortable with. But yes, it's very common to have this stuff fester, and you don't realize it actually until you get older, and maybe you have your own kids that, wow, why am I so worried about hiring a babysitter? Oh yeah, I had a bad experience. Like, you suppress things.
Well, and it's interesting because as people go through childhood traumas, or just, it could be intentional or not intentional, there are...
Right.
It's just like we're going through life with these backpacks and suitcases of pain. And to be able to realize that, does it take a while to figure out, hey, I think I'm in a funk?
It really does. And, there are some signs where, you say no to a lot of things you used to love doing. Maybe you're either overeating or undereating. You're kind of in a cave mentally, physically. You don't want to go out. You're not taking care of yourself. You're not even the simplest thing, even bathing regularly. You just have lost interest in yourself and everything else. And you're not even like physically moving. You're vegging out maybe on TV or the internet, and it spirals you. It's like quicksand.
So why don't we, I know we've kind of talked about funk for a little while now, for our listeners that are maybe new to it and don't really realize what a funk is, how do they identify what a funk is and if they're in it?
Well, as I said earlier, there's a couple kinds, personal and professional. We've all had breakups or disappointments, friends, whatever. And, you can be very impacted by the loss of a friendship or, something really traumatic. You can also feel not recognized or, like your professional life is not fulfilling anymore. And you just don't have this excitement about it, whether it's a relationship or a profession that you're in. And you really have to ask yourself, like, I really say it's like three levels. Where am I? Where do I want to be? And how am I going to get there? Because if you just feel you're just sitting in your cubicle and life's going by and you're not fulfilled, you'll know it. You absolutely will know it. And people will know it around you, the people that really love you.
I think you get this sense of unfulfillment, of, that you're destined for something greater, or that you're not really a participant in your life.
Right. And I mean, I went through that too. I remember actually sitting in a cubicle. I was working in Massachusetts, and I thought, this is it. This is the end of the line. This is how exciting my work gets after all that graduate school. And I just thought, I just cannot do this. This is so unrewarding. I want to do something more creative. I feel so stifled having to sit down 9 to 5. I don't like this. This is not for me. And I was able to really come to that realization, thank goodness.
Was it really hard to make those shifts towards, just kind of switching from a, kind of a negative mindset or just a place where you feel that negativity to where you're starting to feel like, okay, this is worth living and doing?
It is hard. And, one of the ways that I dealt with all the ups and downs, I mean, I moved to Boston in my early 20s, and then within a short time, the company was downsizing. I lost my job. I ended a long relationship that needed to end, but at the time I was young and thought, I am devastated. I'm never going to get over this. What I would recommend, which is what I did, is throw yourself into something that you have always loved doing, that you gave up because you thought, I don't have time. Like for me, it was guitar. And I kept dreaming I was playing guitar. And then I woke up one morning and I said to myself, this is ridiculous. This is an absolute sign. Get up and do something about this already. Somebody's trying to give you a reality slap, Janeane. And I, that day, went out and found a guitar teacher and stayed with it for 9 years. So by going out and doing things you once loved, whether it was when you were little at camp and you loved ceramics, you loved painting, you actually can find, I believe, answers to your toughest questions when you're diverting your attention somewhere else. So when you're in that painting class, you might strike up a conversation with somebody that has great advice for you, or switch careers, because change is scary and maybe you're not brave enough to know what's next. And by putting yourself out there and taking yourself out of that situation and being open, you never know who you're going to meet, because I think conversations with strangers can be a gift.
Without a doubt, I would agree with you 100% there, because a lot of times people that show up and, we tend to have these like synchronistic moments where they're like, hey, did you know you're so good at this? Or I love how you have this positive attitude about that. And it can shift everything.
Right. I have a little story I can share with you if you don't mind.
Oh, yes. I'd love to hear it.
Okay. So I was living in Boston and I had this boring cubicle job sitting in front of a computer. I was designing trainings for banks. And I went to a Syracuse alumni luncheon. My dad signed me up, and I said, Dad, I don't want to go to this. He said, oh, it'll be fun. Just go. And it was at the Four Seasons, and I was wildly uncomfortable, and I'm a bit of an introvert. So I show up, and I'm chit-chatting, and then someone says, we're going to go around the table and introduce ourselves and what we do. And to me, that's torture right there. So my heart's pounding, and I'm just talking about, what I do. And sitting across from me is this older woman. Turns out she was a very well-known actress, and she was probably in her late 70s at the time. And she said, so what do you do? And she says, so obvious you don't really enjoy what you're doing, so why are you doing it? And I said, that's a really good question. And she mentioned the things that she does. And I said, I really wanted to try voiceover because I was asked to narrate a project. She says, well, what are you waiting for? And she scribbled a name down and a number. She says, here's my teacher. Call her when you leave today. Call her today. And just those words, I listened and I did it. And I took classes from her teacher. And I loved it.
That must have been just amazing. And to have people show up like that, it's kind of like, okay, there's the light on my path. That's where I need to go.
She was like my fairy godmother. I was like, wow, where did you come from? And thank you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be so sharing. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I think a lot of times when people, from reading your book and just from listening to your show, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like a lot of times when people are in a funk there, and we talked about this a little earlier, there's just this negative, not so much a mindset, maybe it is a mindset, but it just seems like everything's kind of in a negative slant.
Right.
And so
yes.
How do people first realize that, hey, I'm really kind of in this really negative thought? How do they start getting that to like bit by bit by bit to a more positive mindset?
Right. Well, I do talk about the difference between negative self-talk and positive self-talk. I mean, I've had negative self-talk since I was a teen, looking at my thighs or, my hair, or my acne, face, and we all have these moments. I don't know about you, where sometimes you feel like you're a teenager again and you're just criticizing yourself. And you have to think, what is first thing in the morning when you wake up, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it a negative or a positive? And if you start switching that to a positive, wow, I am so fortunate to have X, Y, and Z. And, the one thing I'm looking forward to today is going to or seeing my 100-year-old friend, or volunteering. I mean, you start switching your self-talk to a positive mindset. It really switches things up. It tremendously, and it has a ripple effect into how people perceive you, how you go about your day and everything.
I just love that because you're so right about the ripple effect, and we don't even realize how that's coming across. But being in that positive place, it's like the people around us feel it. Just from an energetic level, everyone's affected.
They are, even when you're driving down the road, there's a lot of angry people, and they take it out on other people. You put your signal on, and somebody has to speed up because they do not want to let you get in front of them. Why? Will that, take away some time, some seconds, milliseconds from their day? Just being courteous makes you feel good. Having gratitude makes you feel good. Helping somebody else gets you out of your mindset.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting when you're in that positive mindset and the person isn't letting you in or someone cuts you off, you can find a place of greater gratitude for where you're at and go, hey, you know what? Maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they're, in a rush or late for work or a meeting. It gives you a sense of compassion for other people.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You have to have a lot of patience, and, if somebody doesn't call you back right away or doesn't answer your emails, don't think the worst that they're avoiding you. Maybe they're sick. Maybe they have something personal going on, It's all about mindset. And that's why I talk about taking care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually, because, I do something physical 7 days a week, even if it's a walk. because it just starts my day off right and gives me time for myself. I need time to think and start my day, and I need solitude. I mean, really being in tune to who you are and what you need is key.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I love the section in your book where you talk about pampering ourselves and why that's so important. What are some ways that we can pamper ourselves? Because, a lot of times people are like, well, I could go for a walk, but I can't think of anything else.
Right. Well, let's say you don't have a lot of money to go out and go buy a new wardrobe. I have a teenage daughter, and she says, let's go thrifting. So we go to the Goodwill, and sure enough, there's racks and racks of clothing. And the money that I spend on these used clothes goes back to the Goodwill in a good way. Some of the employees, that kind of thing. Just doing something little. Like, it doesn't have to be a full-on makeover at Bergdorf Goodman's, Mm-hmm. Just something, one little step, something to make you feel good. Maybe it's a manicure. Maybe it's a pedicure. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's a new outfit. Maybe it's something, like I said, you've always wanted to try, but you thought, oh, I can't do that. But it looks interesting, like stand-up paddleboarding. I mean, I'm here in Southern California, so our weather is amazing. And I know people much older than me that are going out and kayaking and paddleboarding, and I thought, why aren't I doing that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because you look at that, it's like, hey, let's try something new. Let's get out of these old routines that don't serve me anymore.
Right, because you can tell when life feels a little stale, can't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're just in this, hamster wheel, doing the same thing, very predictable, But like trying a yoga class, taking a meditation workshop, doing some writing, taking a relaxing bath, just doing something that will help you mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, they really kind of move you from this place where things seem hopeless or not really stagnant to like, hey, you know what? To make these kind of changes, I have to really be willing to explore something different.
Right. I mean, I know I talk about writing because it's a great form of expression, and I've been doing it since I was 15. But I was intrigued by screenwriting, and I thought, oh, I'll take a class someday. And then I heard I could take a night class, and I started when my kids were little. So I took one semester of a night class, intro to screenwriting, and I thought, this is really good. Maybe I'll take the next level. And that led to the second level, the third level, the final level, submitting to competitions, continuing to write, coming up with ideas. I mean, it's so exciting to have a creative outlet. I personally think that we're all creative in some way, and having something creative in your life really helps you have a sense of calm when life is crazy. I mean, for you, Marianne, what do you do to have a sense of peace and calm, to relax?
Oh my goodness. Yoga, there's meditation, you could do mindfulness walks. When I was in areas like, in Southern California, I used to go rowing. So, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that can be done.
Yeah. And it feels so good, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Getting out there, being in the fresh air, or maybe just if it's meditating, just, taking time in a quiet place that really feeds your soul.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're musical, but
I like music.
Okay. Well, some people say, I'm not so musical, or I used to play guitar or the drums, but there's so much online for free. Mm-hmm. You don't have a big budget to learn lessons. That's fine, because you have YouTube and you have websites like, I use Songster. So let's say I hear an amazing guitar solo, and I think, well, that sounds hard, but let me see what the notes look like. I can actually go online and learn the song online at my own pace. And it actually is, to me, is a form of an escapism, meditation, relaxation, to learn a song.
It really is, because it gets you out of one mindset into a complete different one.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and throughout your journey, and I know you talk a little bit about this in your book, who's been a superhero in your life?
Well, my very first writing teacher when I was 15, I want to just name her first, Ms. Elizabeth Cady, because she said to us, there are no wrong answers in creative writing. Whatever you feel, whatever you think, you put that on paper. There's nothing, don't worry about it. There's no right, wrong answer. Just express yourself and how you would feel. And she would say, here's a glass of water. What would it feel like if you're swimming in it? And we would look at each other like, is she out of her mind? This is silly, And then we'd come up with these elaborate, stories of, and that was the beginning for me. And I actually won, senior year, I remember winning an award for my writing. And it just, I was a bit insecure. So for somebody that's an introvert and a bit insecure, to have that openness to not judge myself in my writing really helped me. And that's what kept me writing all these years. And the other person I would say would be a high school teacher who taught me the love of reading, because I wasn't a good reader, and that you can always speak up and say, and I'm going to actually do some talks to middle schoolers and high schoolers. If you're not a test taker, that's okay, because we're all not built the same and how we learn. If you speak up and say to your teacher, could I do a project? Can I do a poster board? Can I do a research thing? What the worst they're going to say is no. But a lot of times they say yes. And you can actually, I believe, learn more from doing those kind of creative projects than studying for a test.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the truth? I mean, there's so many, creativity just can't be quantified in many ways. And when we look at young people being able to use part of their own creative process or their creative brilliance to move them along in school, I think is just a phenomenal thing to do.
Right. The last person I do want to mention was somebody I met at Syracuse University who became my advisor, Dr. Phil Doty. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm mentioning him is because I met him randomly. Someone said, go talk to Dr. Doty, because I didn't know what I wanted to major in. And he took like 2 hours out of his day, sat with me and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was naming all these things. He said, you know what? There's this program where you can actually make your own major called Selective Studies. And he allowed me to do that. So I could dabble in communications and TV and radio and education. Talk about a gift.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness. That is
amazing.
A gift.
Yeah.
What a person that's made a huge impact in your life. And you could see it because you're using all these, these talents.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to tap in, because I bombed my SATs. I can now say that with a laugh. Mm-hmm. But back then, I wouldn't tell a soul. But to me, they're a predictor of nothing, because they're humiliating. If you're not a test taker, it does not mean you're not brilliant in some other area.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and so when we talk about, your book, Get the Funk Out, we've talked about just what that is, how to move, the kind of like the needle forward from moving from a place of a negative mindset to a positive mindset, and some of the people have impacted your journey. One of the things I wanted to talk with you about is like relationships. Is there a point where we should start taking stock of the relationships that we have?
Yes, because I talk about the fact that sometimes we have toxic relationships. And they could be family, and they could be friends, and they could be colleagues at work. And the people that wear you out are most likely toxic for you. When you feel emotionally drained, when you dread being with them. And that's a really tough thing, especially if they're family. But the most important thing, again, is your mental health. Because if somebody is constantly ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum on you emotionally, you know what I mean? Like criticizing and when are you gonna, and you just feel completely washed out. that's not supportive. That's not a growth situation for you. And you want people that are going to listen and support you and maybe be mentors and be your sounding board, not beat you down so you can't get back up.
Well, when we get to the place where we identify the unhealthy or the toxic relationships, what do we do with those? Because you did bring up like, hey, with their family, and that could be kind of
Right.
That could be kind of tough. Or maybe it's a boss, and then it's like, okay, well, that's kind of difficult too. So what do we do in those situations?
Well, I do recommend talking to somebody not in your office if it is your boss. Maybe it is, again, a therapist. Maybe it's a close friend. Because it's very tough to work with a boss that is not in line with your thinking or is feeling very toxic. I mean, it might mean that you have to leave that job, or it might mean that you file an anonymous complaint, and it might mean that other people have been experiencing the same thing, but they're not bold enough to speak up because they don't want to lose their job. So you have to kind of figure out, is it worth, being quiet and taking it, or do I observe other people who seem to experience the same thing? And if so, maybe it's the boss that needs to be removed, not me. Do you understand?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting when we get to this place where we're making this kind of assessment. Sometimes leaving is the best thing that could have ever happened to us, but at the time it seems like it could be pretty terrible.
Oh, absolutely. And I have this saying I came up with after talking to so many people on my show and just experiencing my own things. What if the worst thing that ever happened to you turned out to be the best thing that ever happened? I think I really came up with that because when my dad passed away, I had been writing anyway, like in a notebook, but all of a sudden it was like you turned on a faucet and I just couldn't stop writing. And it was the greatest thing. And he always encouraged me to write. So I would tell people, don't be afraid of change, because sometimes taking that first step and making that change will open up some incredible doors for you.
Yeah. It's just the willingness to be there and to look for those opportunities.
Yeah. Mm. Because haven't you had conversations with people that say, I remember years ago when I was younger, oh, I'm in a relationship with so-and-so and they mistreat me but I love them but he's not good for me, but I love him.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like this push, pull, and you're thinking, and you're either saying it or thinking it, just end it already. But they don't. And then you have to hear the same rehash loop of, conversation, and that's not healthy.
Yeah. And do you know what? And it's interesting where we want to be supportive and helpful for people. Being around that kind of unhealthy loop can be kind of tough for us too sometimes.
Yeah, I've had to take a step back from people that all they talk about is that loop, and they talk about the same thing and how they want to make change, but they're not making change, and they really need help because they're not bold enough to jump ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a journey with that. Well, Janeane,
yeah.
What are some thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, as I said, the most important thing really is, what are you going to do to take care of you? I mean, I really believe in making you a top priority, because if you feel good mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you're going to be a better person to those in your life. Your kids, your spouse, your partner. You're going to be better at work. And, when I was talking to these different people in my book, I have 24 people who shared stories in my book. And one of the things that really made sense is the ripple effect. Like, if you're doing yoga and you're challenging yourself and you're focused, what you learn in yoga, as ripples over, the domino effect into work, into other areas of your life. You might be calmer. You might be more focused. You might be willing to deal with challenges better. But just taking care of yourself, making you a number one priority, has such benefits. It really helps you have this toolkit to take care of yourself when life gets really rocky. There's a tremendous amount of depression and anxiety with kids. And I mean, I won't get into the whole thing, but it has to do with technology and how much they're on it. And we all have to really tap into taking care of ourselves and making sure our kids are tuned into that too, because everything has a ripple effect.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And it's interesting because, we're talking about the ripple effect. All this starts with us. So if we have kids or aging parents around us or pets or, you name it, coworkers, people are feeling, everyone around us is feeling what's going on with us.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, you might not be saying what you're feeling, but people can pick up on it, you know?
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, where can our listeners connect with you, learn about your book and your radio show, and just be part of your community?
Sure. Well, first of all the info about me and my book is on my website, which is Janeane, Janeane, so Janeane, Bernstein, BERNSTEIN.com. And if they want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at moms, MOMZ_rock. And I'm also on Facebook, Janeane Bernstein. I'm on Instagram, same, Janeane Bernstein. And I'll give you my show blog. All my shows are on there. GetTheFunkOutShow.KUCI.org.
I love it. I love your show. It's one of the ones I listen to when I go for my walks.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Well, Janeane, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you, Janeane. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, Get the Funk Out. Get the Funk Out's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.